What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us. This is Selvin here with another episode of the Black Student Success Podcast, brought to you by Inquire Higher, where we promote and support the success of Black students and professionals through multimedia. So I'm happy to have today's guest on here. He has spent 10 years in the field of financial services, specifically as a financial advisor, as well as a director of an advisor office. So he's going to talk about what that has been like, what his path has looked like getting into the field, staying in the field, as well as any insights he's gotten along the way. So JB Bell, welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing good, doing really good, man. Looking forward to hanging out today.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. So let's start off how we always do by saying, who is JB Bell?
Good, man. So who is JB Bell? JB is a son. He's a husband. He's a father. JB is someone who understands his life's purpose. He's also someone who's identified his career path in life. He's a speaker. He's a leader, a business owner, a financial advisor. And lastly, I would say most importantly, he's a good listener and he's a servant leader.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the intro. So let's talk about what that path has been like when it comes to figuring out what where you fit and how you're being that servant. What motivated you to get into financial services? Because I know that you have a pretty interesting path as far as how you got there. And even before, we were talking about going to college, specifically for certain things, but it sounds like things kind of made a turn for you. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so when I kind of was a weird kid, my mom or I guess my wife, she would probably say nothing's really changed. I knew probably as early as about seventh, eighth grade that I wanted to be a teacher. And so I went from being kind of middle of the pack, almost last in the class in seventh grade and before, to graduating eighth grade, most improved student. Then I went off to high school and I got valedictorian. And so for me, everything was about, become a history professor. So life changed for me about my senior year of high school, where my grandfather passed away from a heart attack, unfortunately. And about a month after that, I lost a friend in a fire. And then my brother was killed in a robbery my month of that I was going to graduate. And so instead of going off to Duke University, I ended up staying here and going to Marquette University. And, that's where I really met a lot of just good friends. And I got a history journalism degree, continued on to graduate school. And in my last year of graduate school, my biological father ended up getting diagnosed with a rare skin cancer. And it was really in the process of sitting down with my mom's financial advisor that she asked me, hey, son, do you want to become a financial advisor? Have you ever thought about it? And I'm like, lady, are you crazy? In my last year of graduate school, I've known that I want to be a history professor since seventh grade. Like, we don't switch now, However, she influenced me to just to come in and give it a try for a month or for a quarter, basically. And, you speed ahead. I went from wanting to teach history to being blessed enough to make some history, and that I'm the longest lasting Black advisor. My agency is 137 years, So I would say I don't think I chose this field. I think the field had a way of choosing me, and it was rooted, I think, in a desire to want to make sure that other families didn't find themselves where I was. And I felt almost like an intelligent fool. I knew a lot about school, but really didn't necessarily know a lot about how resources, wealth, just financial planning, investments. I didn't know how any of that worked.
Yeah, no, and in a way, you're still utilizing that love for teaching, and just it's in a different avenue. And depending on how you view it, has a lot of meaning to it. When it comes to things that either families or individuals are planning for and really looking forward to, or some of those unexpected events that still requires that planning, still requires kind of walking through, and then in some cases really having that empathy for whatever they're going through, or encouragement for whatever they're looking forward to. So um in the sense that it did choose you, you still have some piece of what your initial goal was, kind of rolling into this career here.
Yeah, the history, for example, I think history did a good job of teaching me how to learn. There's so much you have to stay on top of in the financial services industry. And I think the journalism did a good job of teaching me how to ask good questions and how to listen for certain important things that a client may say, throughout the time. So I think those skills are transferable. And I think if you're going to be successful, you have to learn how to give yourself permission to keep your doors open.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And along the lines of skills and especially what you've picked up in the last 10 years, what skills have you found really useful outside of what you just mentioned to be successful, in your own light within this field? And then also, were there any misconceptions that you had going into it, or maybe even heard from the outside? Now, kind of being in it and being in the field, you're able to kind of let people know that this is actually how it goes.
Yeah, so before I didn't have really any experience dealing with anybody in the financial service industry, and so I think it helped me come in and be able to navigate some of the hard times that people find themselves, or even just some of the negative self talk that can go on. I think a lot of times when people start off in the financial services industry, whether they're focusing in on investments, insurance, or even kind of like with us being more comprehensive and working with both, you can almost be treated or feel like a peddler. Like, I remember sometimes being a little bit surprised. Like, I wonder why are they like being so rude when I called and asked, and I didn't know because I just didn't know, that
Yeah, yeah.
I guess I'm supposed to be looked at as like a used car sales guy or something. I don't know. I don't know. But I think for me, I was able to come into it with a teacher's heart. And one thing I prided myself on very early on in my career is resisting a little bit of the quote unquote faking it till you're making it. And that, I would be honest and say, hey, I just started this about a year ago or 2 years, but here's my background as a history. I'm really good at researching. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to tell you to do something I wouldn't do if I were in your same shoes. And if I don't have an answer, I'm not going to tell you I know. I'm going to get back to you and do a lot of joint work if need be. And people honored me in that early on. So I'd say the first thing that I learned is honesty and vulnerability are really big, powerful traits when you are attempting to start any form of business. The second thing that I've learned that was, an aha moment for me is, the art and science of creating a financial plan is a lot different than the art and science of providing advice. Okay. And I think I've learned over time how to be just a better listener, how to be better at how I educate and being less concerned with outcomes, more concerned with the process. I think that's just helped me overall, even beyond the financial advisory space, but also just in general when it comes to just to life and overall.
Yeah, 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 and it's always good to have the goal in mind. What is the end goal? What are you working towards? But it sounds like you figured out a way to find a balance between still kind of having that at top of mind, but also really putting that attention to how you build up to that point and all those steps that you come along the way, and that human element that comes along with that as well, because you are dealing with people outside of putting the plans together, and everything that kind of falls within that. And then I do like the fact that you mentioned vulnerability, the fact that you can put yourself in a position where you're not, I guess, from the client's view or whoever you're talking to, you're not on so high of a pedestal that become a little bit more intimidating. Maybe that's where the rudeness came in, and everything. So I'm glad that you're able to point those things out, and then not only that, but just find those balance points, for how it drove to your own success.
And one thing I do want to add, and it's easier for me to forget this now because I've been doing this for a while, but I worked really hard for those first, especially 5 to 7 years. I mean, I thank God for my wife and how patient she was with me and allowing me to learn a completely different industry. But I was always of the earliest to get in the office, definitely many times the latest to leave. And I got very acquainted with the cleaning professionals here, and that sometimes I had somebody tap me on the shoulder and say, "Meal, it's time to go to bed." Because I was really fueled by this desire to want to make sure that anything that I tell someone to do, that as I got and advanced more in my career, I never wanted to look back and feel ashamed or embarrassed for anything I asked someone to do. So I was very meticulous about making sure I knew my craft well. It wasn't just the selling and all that. I dug very deep into what is life insurance, disability, long-term care, how do stocks, investments. Like I spent so much time, and I think I'm able to benefit from the fruits of that by being able to go home. Now I feel like I work less days than I did back then.
Yeah, yeah. Well, glad that you got to that point. And not even just that point, but just the fact that you got through the, really tough period. You like you said, that 5 to 7 year period where you really have to take time to not only kind of build up your own business, but build up just the skills, the art to, finding the balance with everything. So I'm glad that you're able to get to that point and just really have the accolade of being the longest standing black advisor in within the area. So to kind of actually segue into my next question, what setbacks did you face, or were there any setbacks that you face, from being black in the field, whether that's now, earlier in your career, and if so, what were some of the things that you did to really get over those obstacles, and really, even taking that to maybe even use to your advantage moving forward?
Yeah, so and my aspirations before I became an advisor to teach history was really rooted in my desire to want to teach Black children either who they were before slavery and or who were some critical figures that we don't get to hear about throughout their life. I feel really blessed that I was able to come into this industry with a lot of belief in myself, with a lot of resolve. I didn't come into the industry feeling anything. I felt very confident in who I was, who I am, and the history and shoulders of the people that I stand on, even including my own family. So I would say, the one, I guess, what I think could have been a lot harder. Like I had to deal with a lot of comments that were, again, I'm with me being the only one. Sometimes you're going to hear comments that are literally like, "Are you serious?"
Mhm.
You're going to have to deal with people who don't necessarily understand the family dynamics. There are times where I have to care for my father, or care for my mom. There's other things that kind of go on that are a result of coming from the environments that I come from. So I think the first kind of hurdle was just getting over like the realizing that, man, there are many times I'm going to have to be here by myself, and I got to make this decision. Am I going to let this break me, and the comment break me, or am I going to stay focused on what's the why behind why I came here, which is really to serve my clients. Okay. So I had to really learn early on some thick skin in terms of just being in an environment where people aren't used to seeing every day people who look like you. So that was kind of a big thing for me. Other hurdles, I would say, with me being first generation from a lower to middle class background, a lot of my family don't understand what it takes to run a business. I'd argue a lot of my family, friends, and people in general don't take what runs the business today.
Mhm.
Okay, and all that goes into it, and whether it be managing employees or yeah, you may make it, but there's this thing called taxes, and you have to pay. So there's a lot that goes, a lot of weight that you carry, and I had to learn how to accept that it's not to not be angry at people who don't understand what my day is like. They're not living it, so there's no way they can understand. So it took me some time just to learn empathy, so it makes my day a little bit smoother when I can accept that. Oh, okay, they just don't get it. I can kind of
Mhm.
move or maneuver around things, but most of it I think is really just mindset things of making a resolve that no matter what comes my way, even if it's a lot of prejudice comments to me are rooted in ignorance. Okay. And I think at the point that you accept that, then you can kind of maneuver around it. And I just treat anybody who does wrong by me. I hate to say it, but I literally treat it as they just have some type of like either like really bad mental issue. And
Mhm.
when I look at it in that way, it makes me not want to judge them. I just move more intelligently around them.
Mm, okay. No, that's a really, really good perspective on that, because it can be easy to get caught up in some of those comments, or really, um, sit in something that somebody says, and then attribute it to how you're actually performing in your career field, and maybe in some cases derail you. But to have that acceptance in the beginning, it sounds like would make that a little bit easier, because those are some of those things that you just can't control, but you can control how you maneuver around that.
Hmm. And the last thing I'll say to that point is, this is why history is so important. Maya Angelou said, if a person shows you who they are, believe them, right?
Mhm.
But I would say to add and respect my sister, but I also will say if a person shows you change, forgive them. And
Yeah.
I've been amazed at some of the relationships I've been able to build outside of my even own group. And the reason why, again, is because I do truly have confidence in who I am. And I can accept that humans are just naturally flawed beings and they're always up and down. And I think the
Mhm.
minute you accept that, you'll just, it's the beginning of wisdom.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the things that you touch on as far as, taking a lot of time to learn about, the field, and I kind of want to be a little bit more direct to, to financial services in general, because there's a lot of exams that you got to kind of go through. You have to learn the products, you have to learn what you can and cannot say and things like that. And then on top of that, with being a financial advisor, I know the format may be a little bit different, but there may be some cases where you're straight commission or you're partially commission, and trying to like learn or even just kind of prepare for that. So for somebody who knows that they want to get into the field, for all of the things that can come with being a financial advisor, with the education, teaching people how to plan, with their money a little bit better, with all those other things that come with it, that they have to kind of prepare for. What advice would you have for somebody, who is looking to kind of take on all of that, take on the fluctuations of income, studying for tests and things like that? What advice would you give to them?